Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. I don't want to relitigate the bailouts. I'd say it's a hated program because there wasn't a single solitary person who was held accountable. I think that's what the American people would say. As somebody who came here from outside of politics, nobody went to jail. This cost the taxpayer billions and billions of dollars and zero accountability. So, but let's not relitigate that whole conversation. In terms of waste, fraud, and abuse, I can tell you as somebody who owned a small business, I used to joke with my team that I would love to have the money that big corporations waste, because that would make me fabulously wealthy, just taking their waste. Then I got here, and I just had to add zeros. $2.8 trillion since 2003 in waste, fraud, abuse, and improper payments. When did government stop caring about that? People don't like to pay taxes. We understand that. But when people see their tax dollars treated in this way, where it's just, I don't know if it's that this town is numb to this, but in your mind, just ask you a direct question.
Right.
What is a tolerable amount of waste, fraud, and abuse, and improper payments?
I think as close to zero as you can get. It's not feasible to get there, but we're way beyond what's a reasonable level of waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. We did our first estimate ever of fraud from 2018 to 2022. On an annual basis, we estimated between $233 billion or to $521 billion annually to fraud. Now, we're doing an estimate now on the revenue side. I expect it to be maybe not that high, but to be significant. The federal government right now is very vulnerable to fraud from organized crime, both domestically and internationally. I mean, during the pandemic, some people have said we trained a whole new generation of fraudsters because we had so much money available during that period of time. We helped Congress put in a Fraud Prevention Act, but the agencies haven't implemented it effectively. And that's one area that I think Congress needs to provide more rigorous oversight on. One of our recommendations is to provide more reporting every year to be visible as to what the agencies are doing to measure fraud in some of the high-risk programs like Medicare, Medicaid, for example. Unemployment insurance is another one. And so we have open recommendations to OMB and Treasury to come up with those more precise estimates. And if you measure it and report, you'll get the reaction that you talk about. We find improper payments through the first financial audits of the federal government. And we've worked with Congress to have agencies
So if I
report.
could just pause
there.
there.
Sure,
so,
go ahead.
So I just go back to the only world I know, which is my world.
Right.
And we started as a small business and grew it into a decently sized business, but never would we ever tolerate a scenario where we may have paid a vendor twice, we may have paid the wrong amount in payroll once. Right. We always got the money back. By the way, if that meant that I got in my car, drove to that business, and sat there until they wrote me a check, that's what I would do. What are we doing about getting that money back? So if we send $100, which imagine that from the federal perspective, and it was not intended for that company or individual, what are we doing about getting that money back? And what do we need to do in terms of raising the penalties to the point, not quite the death penalty, but maybe a couple clicks below that for not doing that? Like what are the ramifications of getting improper payments to the federal government?
Yeah. First, the incentives aren't aligned properly.
But I'm saying, well, what do we do?
Yeah.
In other words, if we know we sent XYZ Corp money.
Right. The agencies, we have many recommendations to go collect that money.
And do they do it?
Yeah, in some cases they do, some they don't get it all back. I mean, and for example, in the economic...
How do you give, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sure.
How do we give agencies more money here in Congress if the agencies don't have a airtight process to get that money back? That doesn't even make, honestly, that doesn't process in my brain. Where we allocate appropriate money to agencies and the agencies don't have an airtight, zero leakage process to get money back. I don't understand how that, either the penalties aren't so incredibly high or the agencies aren't doing it. It goes back to my beginning of my comments, which is the reason people hated the bailouts is because nobody's held accountable. How do we not have that being top priority at all these agencies?
Yeah, most of the agencies feel they get in trouble for not paying somebody, as opposed to paying somebody that
How do we
they don't
flip
know.
that?
We need to flip it, and we need to have more oversight
what
by
can
the
we do?
Congress.
What can we do to flip
Congress needs to have the agencies come up. I come up all the time and testify on improper payments. Agencies are rarely brought up before Congress, and so what are you doing about it? And what can we do to build in? Some of these programs, too, don't go through annual appropriations. They're on mandatory spending on Medicare. If somebody meets the requirement, they get paid. Yeah, and so they need more oversight by the Congress to hold people accountable. There's clear information that's available, but unless Congress holds people accountable and there's more focus on the executive branch and having transparency about these improper payments, we're trying to provide more transparency about it. But you got to set requirements on the agencies, and you got to follow up. Most of the time they hear from Congress is because one of your constituents didn't get paid, as opposed to people being overpaid. And I think they need to hear that.
Is there any opportunity for partnerships with private companies that can use AI, that can use their own programs to go out and give them an incentive to go out and do what the agencies aren't willing to do?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities for better technology. But also, one thing you should do is, it took me almost 10 years to convince Congress to have the death master file from Social Security Administration given to the Fiscal Service of Treasury to stop paying dead people. During the pandemic, we paid $1.4 billion in economic incentive payments to deceased indivials.
But again, how did we not get that money back?
Well,
Somebody cashed those checks.
They got about half of it back, and they get the rest. But I'm saying Congress needs to make this is on a pilot program right now. It's already saved $100 million a year. Congress needs to make that permanent. That's one of our recommendations.
I think, Mr. Chairman, what we could do is start a Fortune 10 company that would only collect the money that government wastes. And it's sad that that's actually would probably be an incredibly profitable enterprise, but we have to do more, and we cannot normalize this.